Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and today we are doing The Lost Princess of Oz, but also we are looking at interior illustrations and cover illustration and color illustrations that are the ones that I remember from my childhood. Now, funnily enough, I got this off of the Gutenberg Project, which for those who don't know, the Gutenberg Project is a digitization of books that are out of copyright. That is, once a book is more than 100 years old, it ceases to be under copyright and can now be just put up wherever for free in whatever way you want. And so this, an original publication of The Lost Princess of Oz dating back to 1917, these are the covers that I remember from when I was younger. These are the covers that I don't think that I ever read an edition that had been printed in 1917. But this art by John R. Neill here, this cover, this interior illustration, these are images that I remember extremely fondly, and a style that I remember extremely fondly, because these are the ones that I recall from when I was a kid. This picture of Ozma, this is very much how I have always pictured Ozma in my head, because this is the image that I recall. You can see this, it's very, very, what's the term I'm looking for? That 1920s style. This is 1917 that this is published. So you can see the incipient degrees of the way that things look, the fashions that were in the artistic preferences, the commercial artistic preferences of the period. Again, Glinda, to me, has always had that weird headpiece on with the netting around the bottom of her hair and the thing on top of her head. These are the images for me of the Oz series, Wizard of Oz, the film starring Judy Garland notwithstanding. And I have a great deal of affection for these sorts of interior illustrations. Frankly, if I'd thought of Gutenberg sooner, I probably would have done the whole series there, but I didn't. I went to my local public library, and that is on my own head. The Duke ones were ones that I had also seen, but these ones, these earlier 1917, 1916, 1915, these are ones that really hold my affection and my memories very, very well. So, let's leap ahead a little bit. The plotline of this book is basically that everybody wakes up one day to find a whole bunch of magical stuff, as well as Princess Ozma of Oz, has been stolen. The people in the Emerald City, Ozma's friends and immediate compatriots, decide that they're going to go questing to find her, which is how we wind up with this leading off into the much more standard Oz story of aimless wandering, because indeed they basically, each of them says, okay, you go to the Munchkin country, you go to the Gillikin country, you go to the Winky country, and you guys go to the Quadling country, and everybody just go and see what you find. And that is what they do. So, what happens, of course, is that the wizard, who has since ceased to be a humbug wizard who just knows some sleight of hand tricks and has a balloon, and has actually developed some skill in real magic because he has become Glinda the Good Witch's assistant. Yes, the Wizard of Oz is now Glinda's assistant. By the way, this is a development that happened several books back, but I hadn't discussed it because it's just kind of a thing that happens. Anyway, those of you who haven't read this book are probably wondering about the frog with, the suit. Well, the story goes that not only did a whole bunch of stuff get stolen by important characters that we remember, a very important cooking pan got stolen from a woman who is part of the, I believe they're called the Yips, and basically they're a bunch of people. Oz has a lot of isolated, weird corners in it, in no small part because, of course, this is an L. Frank Baum book, and that's what he wants. But basically, you have these people, and they live up on top of a very, very large hill, which is surrounded by a massive bramble patch that is so deep and so painful looking that nobody has ever crossed it, so they don't know anything about the outside world. And one day, a frog made its way there and somehow grew extremely large, and he was such a 9 days wonder that everybody decided that he was extremely amazing and extremely wise, and they made him fancy clothing, and because this is Oz, he was of course able to talk and somewhat reason, and believed himself to be the wisest and greatest of all minds in the land. So when this cook's golden pan studded with diamonds gets stolen, the two of them set off on an expedition to track down her pan, which she needs back because it turns out that without this pan she can't cook. Pan has a lot of magical powers, but I suspect the also making awesome food is probably one of them, which I think a lot of us would like a magic pan that you could just, like, if I throw stuff in it, it will turn out amazing. That sounds like such a great object. Anyway, so we, Dorothy, the wizard, the patchwork girl, pictured here, also, Trot, if you recall Trot from an earlier book, and Betsy Bobbin, Hank, the Cowardly Lion, the Sawhorse, and, what's his name, Button Bright. They decide to go off, and they head off to look for Ozma in their direction. And they have various adventures, including this one where they have to bounce around on a bunch of what appears to be spinning mountains that turn out to be made out of rubber, which is just extremely Oz. Here's a picture of Dorothy holding Toto, who snuck along with her as they bounce around the mountains, and as you can see, Toto looks very distressed because, frankly, that looks like a distressing experience. And I didn't take it down all of the pictures because, frankly, I didn't want to get sidetracked too much by the pictures. But, I love these illustrations. I love, just these beautiful, quirky characters that really, the illustrations really do add something to this book. Anyhow, so the story involves them basically wandering along, asking anyone they run across, "Hey, have you seen Ozma?" And most people, of course, have not. In the due course of things, we have the parallel story of the Frogman and I honestly don't recall either of their names because I'm terrible with names. And the two of them, go on their own peculiar adventures. Eventually, the Frogman gets a sort of a comeuppance, but what's really, really interesting, I find, is that what L. Frank Baum has done with him is he has taken this character who is horrifically arrogant and self-centered, and he has this truth pond, which came up in a previous book because the Shaggy Man swam in it and then was forced to confess the truth about this love magnet that he claimed had been given to him by a friend, but it turned out he had just stolen it. The thing is that upon swimming in the truth pond, one cannot do anything but tell the truth from then on. And the frog is forced to not only tell the truth to other people, he's forced to admit to himself that he is not the greatest and wisest of all creatures. But what's very, very interesting is once his ego goes away, he actually turns out to have a delightful bent for calm, pragmatic, rational thought. And it's such an interesting twist in the character because, you know, he makes a big deal out of I am the wisest ever, and all of the yips think that he's the wisest ever. And then when he's forced to admit that he's not, he nonetheless turns out to be one of the most together and smartest members of their little band. It's an unexpected thing because in a way it kind of retroactively gives more credit to the yips than you would have thought, precisely because if he is as smart and sensible and clear-headed, you know, after swimming in the truth pool, just because somebody has been lying to himself and other people about being wise doesn't mean that he is completely lacking in, you know, in offerings of common sense. So it makes me suspect retroactively in a kind of world building way that it may have been that the yips actually became impressed with him not merely because he was a giant talking frog, which is extremely impressive, but also because he actually did talk good horse sense. In the end, they do manage, of course, to rescue Ozma from the man who had indeed kidnapped her and stolen a whole bunch of magical items. That was because he had decided he wanted to be the greatest sorcerer in the world, and he knew that the only way he would manage that is if he kept other people from, you know, being better than him. So he stole magic, all of the magic, you know, stuff and things and whatnot from other people in Oz, and of course made sure to take Ozma because she is also one of the most powerful magic workers in the country. And then we get a sort of a deus ex machina at the end of the book because Dorothy... The thing is, Dorothy won the Gnome King's magic belt many, many moons ago. You know, back in Ozma of Oz, the third book in the series. But the thing was that she had left it in Ozma's care because if you take magical things out into the real world, they kind of evaporate. So she left it with Ozma so that Ozma could use the belt, but it's technically Dorothy's. And so Dorothy decided to bring the belt with because if she's wearing the belt, nothing can harm her, but she also decided to learn some things about using the belt, and so we actually see Dorothy doing some magic with the magic belt, which results in transforming the bad guy into a dove, which in the end leads to him having a internal emotional reformation, which is rather... I mean, it's very par for the course for Oz to have the bad guys discover that, you know, they're being awful and maybe they should stop. But it's always intriguing. The happy endings that L. Frank Baum has just said, no, he's going to realize that what he was doing was wrong and selfish and awful, and he's just going to stop. Because being good may not be as fun as being bad, but it's a great deal more pleasant for everybody else. A bit of wisdom that we learned from Rinky-Tink in the last book. Yeah, I've waxed rhapsodic about the pictures, and I've gone through the story, and yeah, I think that's everything that I have to say. Except, you know, this is a strong return to form, standard form for L. Frank Baum, as compared to Rinky-Tink and Oz, which was, I mean, it's a good book, but it's really, really an outlier by usual Oz standards. So that's everything, and I will see you all next week.